Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. The title of today's lesson is Turning Back from Wickedness unto Righteousness. Once again, today's lesson is entitled Turning Back from Wickedness unto Righteousness. Many of our people have done things that were incorrect, that were unlawful, that were sinful, that were wicked. Many of us are still doing it today. Some of us are doing this thing knowingly. Some of us are doing it unknowingly. However, regardless of your errors, if you have been in transgression against the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, his arm is extended still by which to receive you should you turn back from your wicked way. This is why the Most High's law is an extension of his mercy. What is mercy? Mercy is grace. So by way of this law, the Most High has extended an olive branch, if you will, that his people may be received by him should they consider their ways and their doings and make it good, and ultimately turn back to the way or to the laws that we were given at the first. So we are to look over our ways and we're to make those necessary changes that we may turn away from wickedness and turn onto the Most High's righteousness. Once again, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws. Do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We're to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. We're not to deviate to the right hand or to the left hand. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. All right. With this lesson, we will read Ezekiel chapter 18. That way we clearly understand that the Most High's laws are in full effect. And once we are experiencing these hardships in the many nations in which we dwell, that we are experiencing these hardships and this plight because we are walking contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. They are in full effect. No one has ever died for you, and at no time has a Levite or a priest of the Most High has ever baptized anyone. All right, starting off with chapter 1. Verse 1 of Ezekiel chapter 18. The word of Yah came unto me, saying, What mean ye that ye use this proverb concerning the land of Israel, saying, The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. Now, if you eat way too many grapes, mangoes, or any type of fruit, what happens is if you were to inhale like that, okay, and bring some air into your mouth, your teeth will be so sensitive it's almost unbearable. And that's what it means by having your teeth set on edge. The teeth becomes really sensitive to air and anything else. All right, it's almost an unbearable feeling if you've ever experienced that. So what this is saying here is that there was a proverb back in the day, okay, that said clearly, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. In other words, the children would pay for anything that the parents have done. And that was the old proverb. Verse 3. As I live, saith Yah, ye shall not have occasion anymore to use this proverb in Israel. So the Most High said that we will not be allowed to use this proverb anymore, meaning that the father does something and the children pays for it. Okay, so we will not have an occasion to use that proverb anymore. Verse 4, Behold, all souls are mine. As the soul of the father, so also the soul of the son is mine. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. In other words, you will pay for your own sins. Every man is on his own, and your own way will be placed upon your own head. Okay, so it's every man for himself. You can only save you. No one can save you. Verse 5, which totally eliminates someone dying for you. Verse 5, but if a man be just and do that which is lawful and right, to be just, that is to be a righteous man, to be just and lawful. That would be someone who walk in righteousness. That would be someone who takes a hold of Torah and walk within the confines of it. Verse 6, and have not eaten upon the mountain, meaning you have not served these idols, you have not gone up to the eminent high places. Neither have lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel. Neither have defiled his neighbor's wife. Neither has come near to a menstruous woman. Okay. Eating upon the mountain, that is to go up to the high places, lifting up your eyes to idols. Okay. To defile your neighbor's wife, that would be to lay down with your neighbor's wife. That is an egregious sin. That is an adultery. To come near to a menstruous woman, if your wife is on her cycle, whether it's your first wife, second wife, etc., you are at no time to touch that woman when she's on her menstrual cycle. These are all sins that we have just read. So if any man does any of these things, verse 7, and has not oppressed any, but has restored to the debtor his pledge. For example, if you're doing these things that are right, also have not oppressed any. Some people will oppress the poor, will take advantage of them, and have restored to the debtor his pledge. For example, if you borrowed something from someone and you had promised to repay a certain amount at a certain time, etc., you are to make sure that whatever your word was as far as repaying that, you're to do those things, to repay those pledges, and have spoiled none by violence. You have not robbed anyone, have not taken anyone's substance by violence, has given his bread to the hungry. What you have done, you've extended your arms wide to the poor. If someone was in need and you were capable of helping them, you did that. Has given his bread to the hungry and has covered the naked with a garment. So any man that has done these things, if you have done these things, these are righteous things. Okay. So if you have, you have not gone up and eaten on the mountain. You haven't done that. You have not lifted up your eyes to idols. You have not done that. You have not defiled your neighbor's wife. You have not done that. You have not oppressed the poor in any way. You have not reneged on a debt that you owed. You have not robbed and spoiled anyone by violence. When you saw the hungry, you fed them, okay? And when you saw the naked, you clothed them. If you've done any of these things, these are righteous things, okay? Verse 8, he that hath not given forth upon usury, okay? The man that has not loaned his brother $50 and said, well, when you give it back to me, I need $60. Usury is nothing but interest. When an Israelite loaned money to another Israelite, he is not to charge him usury. That is interest. It is against the Most High's law to do it. And you're to be mindful of that. Once again, verse 8. He that has given forth upon usury, neither have taken any increase, that hath withdrawn his hand from iniquity. If you are, you see any type of sinful situation going on, wickedness, you withdraw your hands. You refuse to take part in any wickedness, okay? Has executed true judgment between man and man. When you come upon a situation and two men are arguing, or two brothers are arguing, and you decide, you know what, since this one is my buddy or this one is my friend, though he's incorrect, I'm going to side with him, or I'm going to lie for him and be a false witness, etc. Okay, these are things that we don't want to do. Okay, so far what it's stating from verse 6 on, it's stating all the things that a righteous person would do. All right. So we're to actually execute true judgment between man and man. In other words, we are always to side with the person that is doing right. We are not to actually side with the wrongdoer. That would be an unrighteous thing to do. Verse 9, hath walked in my statutes and hath kept my judgments, to deal truly he is just. He shall surely live, saith Yah. So all the things that are righteous, should a man or a woman walk within the confines of the Most High's law and do them, that person shall surely live, saith the Most High. Verse 10, if he begot a son that is a robber, a shedder of blood, and that doeth the like to any of these things, to any one of these things, excuse me. So therefore, if this righteous man that has done all of these righteous things would have a son, and the son is totally opposite of his father. The son is a robber, he's a shedder of blood, and he does all of these manner of things that are contrary to the Most High's law. Verse 11, and that doeth not any of those duties, but even have eaten upon the mountain and defiled his neighbor's wife. That's a man that will go to the high places, worship the idols, and this is a man that would defile his neighbor's wife. Verse 12, hath oppressed the poor, he's oppressed the poor and the needy, hath spoiled by violence, he has robbed his fellow man and took his substance, has not restored the pledge, made a pledge, borrowed $100 from a man, and then all of a sudden don't want to pay it back, has lifted up his eyes to the idol, gone to the eminent high places, have committed abomination, eating unclean foods and all the other abominations that is listed within the curse, within the laws of the Most High. Verse 13, hath given forth upon usury. That man decides, you know what, I'm gonna lend you $50 today, but next week when you get paid, you're gonna have to pay me 60. That's usury. Okay, that's interest. We're not to do it. And have taken an increase. Shall he then live? So if a man does all of these things that are contrary to the Most High's law, should this man live? And the answer is simple. He shall not live. He hath done all these abominations. He shall surely die. His blood shall be upon him. So we understand clearly that if a man walks righteously before the Most High, and his son after him does not, that the son will pay for his own way. His father's righteousness cannot deliver him. Verse 14. Now lo, if he begot a son that seeth all his father's sins, which he has done, and considereth and doeth not such like. All right, what does this mean? So if the wicked man, we've just read first we read what the righteous man would do, and then we started to read what the wicked man would do. So if the wicked man now has a son, we know if the righteous man has a son, and the righteous man's son walk in wickedness, that the righteous man's son will pay, and his father cannot deliver him. So now we're going to read simply, what if the wicked man has a son, and the wicked man's son decides to say, you know what, I've seen the wickedness of my father. My father have walked contrary to the Most High's law, statute, judgments, and precepts. I will do none of the like. I will turn back, and I will walk within the confines of the Most High's law, statute, judgments, and precepts. Now we will read what will befall that man, what will become of him. All right. So let's go ahead and start verse 14. Now lo, if he begot a son that seeth all his father's sins, which he hath done, and considereth and doeth no such like. Verse 15. That hath not eaten upon the mountain, neither hath lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, hath not defiled his neighbor's wife, neither hath oppressed any, hath not withholden a pledge, neither hath spoiled by violence, but has given his bread to the hungry, and has covered the naked with a garment, that hath taken off his hand from the poor, that hath not increased, that hath not received usury nor increase, have executed my judgments, have walked in my statutes, he shall not die for the iniquity of his father. He shall surely live. So if a man who is the son of a wicked man, but that son said, you know what? I will walk within the confines of the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. I will not walk after the wicked ways of my father. Then that son who has taken a hold of righteousness, he shall live. He will not have to deal with the sins of his father, for that son has turned back from wickedness unto righteousness. Verse 19. Verse 18. As for his father, because he cruelly oppressed, spoiled his brother by violence, and did that which is not good among his people, lo, even he shall die in his iniquity. So, the goal would be to, when you die, you're not to die in your iniquity, you're not to die in your sin. So as you become aware of the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, what you are to do, you are to turn back. Where you see you've been in error, you are to certainly face Jerusalem, acknowledge your fault, and do that thing no more. That way, should you pass away, and at some point we all will, you will not die in your sin. You would have cleaned up your act, and you would die in righteousness rather than die in wickedness. You will not pine away in these lands. Verse 19. Yet say ye, why? doth not the Son bear the iniquity of the Father? When the Son hath done that which is lawful and right, and has kept all my statutes, and have done them, he shall surely live. Verse 20. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. Now, in other words, you will pay for your own behavior. And this eliminates you getting baptized and dipping in water, and that eliminates anyone dying for you. The Most High makes it plain in this chapter that every man will die for his own sins. The ways of the wicked will be upon him. The ways of the righteous will be upon him. Every man is responsible for himself. Your father cannot deliver you. Your mother cannot deliver you. You will deliver your own soul. It is simple as that. Verse 21. But if the wicked will turn from all his sins that he has committed, and keep all my statutes, and do that which is lawful and right, he shall surely live. He shall not die. So if you are a wicked person, you're stealing, you're lying, you're laying out with your neighbor's wife, or you're doing anything or have done anything in the past that are contrary to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, precepts, you will certainly pine away in these nations, and you will die within your sins. Your ways will be returned upon your own head. Verse 22. All his transgressions that he hath committed, they shall not be mentioned unto him. Let me reread that again. All his transgressions that he has committed, they shall not be mentioned unto him. In his righteousness that he has done, he shall live. So therefore, any man that turned away from wickedness, you have done some things, you've robbed some people, you've got a jail sentence, paid for it. You have stolen, you have murdered, you have done whatever the case may be. You have done some things contrary to the Most High's law, lay down with your neighbor's wife, etc. What you are to do, you're to turn and face Jerusalem, hands upon your knees, lifting your hands in prayer. And you're to acknowledge your fault. And in so doing, you should never do them again. So if you were to turn from your wicked way, from all the sins that you have committed, and you decide to say, you know what, I will keep the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, precepts, I'll do that which is lawful and right. The Most High said that you shall live and not die. All right, he says clearly in verse 22, all his transgression that he has committed, they shall not be mentioned unto him. So all the foulness that you have done, no one's going to come up to you and say, hey man, I remember back when you robbed such and such, and now all of a sudden here you are professing to be righteous, when I know back in the day you robbed and killed and shot such and such, or did whatever the case may be that was contrary to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. The Most High says, should that man take a hold of the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, precepts, and do that which is right in his sight, and this is done in sincerity of heart, that his crimes, his sin, will not even be mentioned to him. I will read that again. All his transgressions that he has committed, they shall not be mentioned unto him. In his righteousness that he hath done, he shall live. Verse 23. Have I any pleasure at all that the wicked should die? This is the Most High asking the question. Does he have any pleasure at all that the wickedness should die? And the answer to that is no. He has no pleasure in killing you. Saith Yah, and not that he should return from his ways and live. So the Most High is saying that he takes no pleasure in having to kill you for walking contrary to his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. He takes pleasure when you have acknowledged your faults, recognize if you've walked contrary against him, that you have done violence to his law, and you decide, you know what, I see where walking contrary to this law is harmful. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn back and do that which is right, that which I was commanded in the days of old. And the Most High takes pleasure in those who will acknowledge their faults and turn back onto his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts and do them. All right, verse 24. But when the righteous turneth away from his righteousness and committeth iniquity, and does according to all the abominations that the wicked man doeth, shall he live? All right, the question is, when a man who has taken a hold of righteousness will not lay down with his neighbor's wife, will not steal, will not cheat, will not murder. He will keep the Sabbath day. He's doing all the things that the Most High have instructed in Torah. What happens when a man says, you know what, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to keep the Sabbath. My neighbor's wife, I'm going to go lay down with her. I'm going to do all of I'm going to eat that pork. I'm going to eat that shrimp, that lobster, and that crab, and that catfish. And totally, after walking in righteousness, totally abandons it and turns back onto wickedness. What happens to that man? So the question was, shall he live? Should the man that turneth away from his righteousness and committeth iniquity and doeth according to all the abominations that the wicked man doeth, shall he live? All his righteousness that he has done shall not be mentioned. In his trespass that he has trespassed, and in his sin that he has sinned, in them shall he die. So, this is one of those what have you done for me lately type of situations. So therefore, if you have walked in righteousness and all of a sudden you decide you don't want to be righteous anymore and you want to turn to wickedness, then all of a sudden your righteousness that you have done, no one is going to mention that to you. So when you have turned to wickedness, no one is going to say, hey man, I remember back in the day when you were a righteous man and you did that which was right in the sight of the Most High. Whatever happened to you? No one is going to mention your righteousness because they're wiped away, they're gone. Because you have turned back to darkness from the light. You've turned back from righteousness and you've gone wicked. So therefore you will die in your wickedness and your righteousness do not count anymore. Verse 25, yet say ye, the way of Yah is not equal. Hear now, O house of Israel, is not my way equal? Are not your ways unequal? All right, now let's deal with this verse 25 of Ezekiel chapter 18. The house of Israel is saying the way of Yah is not equal. So if it's not equal, then it's unjust. And this is what the Christian has told you. This is what the Roman has told and taught you in the many lands of our captivity. And many of the children of Israel are reiterating and speaking and parroting and repeating this nonsense. So if you're going to say that the ways of the Most High are not equal, then you're saying that the Most High is not just. You're saying that the Most High is not righteous. In other words, when you say that, you have blasphemed the Most High. Notice where the Most High responds. Listen to this. Hear now, O house of Israel. The Most High did not say, hear now, O Catholics. Did not say, hear now, O Christians. Don't even know who those people are. Hear now, O house of Israel, that specific family that I have chosen. That's who he's speaking to here. Now, he says, hear now, O house of Israel, is not my way equal? So he's asking us, aren't my ways equal? Are not your ways unequal? So what he's saying, my ways are righteous and your ways are not. That's what he's saying. That's what he is saying. But the house of Israel have taken a hold of lies and vanities and things wherein there is no profit, because the heathen has taught us that the ways of the Most High are not equal. How so? They will say that, the laws are done away with because the Most High or the Creator gave his people laws that they could not keep. Now, it would be an unrighteous thing for you to give someone a law that you know they couldn't keep, to give them instruction that you know no matter what they couldn't follow. So therefore, that would make his ways unequal. But the Most High says, no, my ways are equal, your ways are unequal. So therefore, the Most High answers right here in that one verse in this chapter that his laws still stand, for his ways are unchangeable. He changes not. And he's making it plain that his ways are equal and that our ways are not equal. Verse 26, when a righteous man turneth away from his righteousness and committeth iniquity, and dieth in them. For his iniquity that he has done shall he die. So you will die for your sins. And we continue to see the house of Israel get murdered left and right, getting killed left and right. And we have never asked ourselves, what has this man done that would cause the Most High to pour out his fury upon him and his house? So these are some things that we must consider when we see violence, because the Most High did say he was going to send violence after us. That's pestilence and the sword. And the sword comes in many manifestations. So when we see violence, which is known as evil, being brought to a man or his house, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, what has this man done contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts that's caused the Most High to move against him and his house, to where that man had absolutely no protection? Because walking within the confines of the Most High's law, these are protective mechanisms. They protect you from the violence and everything else that you see around you. So when you see an Israelite being murdered and all these hardships befall them, the first thing you should ask yourself is, I wonder if he's keeping the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And I can almost guarantee you he's not. So this is the point where those of us who are walking within the confines of the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we have to place our trust in the Most High, that by walking in his Torah, that he will indeed protect us. Thus far, I can attest that that is true. All right. Verse 27 again. When the wicked man turneth away from his wickedness that he has committed, and doeth that which is lawful and right, shall he save his own soul? No, he shall save his own soul, excuse me. So if a man that's wicked, done all manner of foul things, lay down with his neighbor's wife, done a couple of robberies, served a little 10-year sentence, has done all types of foul things, have heard about the Most High's Torah, gone into it, have read it, understood it, and understand clearly why he has been afflicted, because he has been walking contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And that man has made a decision saying, you know what? I now clearly understand the error of my ways. I understand what has caused me all of this strife and affliction. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn again. I'm going to turn back to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And I will do this wickedness no more. What's going to happen to this man? Let me reread verse 27 again. Again, when the wicked man turneth away from his wickedness that he hath committed, and doeth that which is lawful and right, he shall save his soul alive. That's how you save yourself. You save yourself from turning back from wickedness onto righteousness. No one can save you. No one has ever died for you. Everyone died for his own sins. Let that be clear. All right. Verse 28. Because he considereth and turneth away from all his transgressions that he has committed, he shall surely live, he shall not die. So once again, once you turn back from wickedness unto righteousness, that is a pleasing thing to the Most High. And this law is an extension of his mercy. This law is grace. Grace is the extension of mercy. This grace, this law, by walking in it, that is the bridge back to the Most High. All right. So we are to consider our ways and our doings and to make them good. Verse 29. Yet saith the house of Israel, the way of Yah is not equal. Once again, not only is the house of Israel saying this, but the heathen is saying this. Most High law is done away with. The Most High law was too hard, and he realized that he gave man laws that he couldn't keep, so he scrapped the laws and said ain't no law and sent somebody to die for you. That totally contradicts the words of this very chapter, and it contradicts everything from Genesis to Malachi. Real prophets. Thus saith Yah all through here. So, you are to carefully consider the things that you read and hear in this book. And you're certainly to be circumspect. You're to thoroughly investigate and to read this information for yourself. For you are the only one that can deliver you. No one else can. No one has ever died for you. And when you got baptized, the only thing that happened on that day is you got wet. And chances are you were in the presence of idolaters, in the house of idolatry. All right. Once again, verse 29. Yet saith the house of Israel, the ways of Yah is not equal. O house of Israel, are not my ways equal? Are not your ways unequal? Now, when you hear the word equal means righteous. When you hear unequal, that means unrighteous. All right, verse 30. Therefore, I will judge you, O house of Israel, everyone according to his ways, saith Yah. Repent and turn yourselves from all your transgressions, so iniquity shall not be your ruin. All right, iniquity. The Most High is saying, turn back from your wicked way. Turn back from saying that somebody died for your sins and I sent somebody down there to save you. It's never happened. You're to save yourself. I've scattered you into these many nations because you have walked contrary to my law. And because you have disobeyed my law, I've sent you to these many nations to pay for your transgressions. However, while I have sent you there, I have left an extension of my mercy. My law is in the midst of you. If only you would consider your ways and doings and read it and ultimately turn back to it by doing it. Because we were instructed to do the law. It's an action. And so, should we turn back and do that which is right in the sight of the Most High, then he will judge us. The righteous, his way will be upon him. The unrighteous, his way will be upon him. So if you're trying to stop the affliction that you may have experienced in times past, and you may be still experiencing these hardships, there's one way to save yourself from the sorrows that we have experienced in these many nations. All we have to do is turn back to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And that is for an Israelite, and that is also for the stranger that is of a contrite spirit. If you're seeking the true and living Creator, then you have to walk within his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, irregardless of your nation. So the Most High says, let me read verse 30. Why? Because the latter part of that verse is very important. Therefore, I will judge you, O house of Israel. Didn't say I will judge you, O Christians. Didn't say I will judge you, O Catholics. Most High is speaking to the house of Israel, a specific family that he has chosen. Everyone according to his way, saith Yah. Repent and turn yourselves from all your transgressions, so iniquity shall not be your ruin. You are being ruined. You are being destroyed because you are walking outside of the boundaries, outside of the barriers, outside of the protective mechanisms of the Most High's law. Verse 31. Cast away from you all your transgressions, whereby ye have transgressed, and make you a new heart and a new spirit. For why will ye die, O house of Israel? Did not say whole wide world. Not talking to everybody. Did not say, O Chinese people, O Arab people. None of that. He's speaking to a family. O house of Israel. A specific bloodline of people. So he said to cast away your transgressions. Take all of these foul things that you've been doing. All of these foul things that you've been eating. Distance yourself from it. And that requires discipline. So distance yourself from these things whereby you have transgressed against me, and make a new heart and a new spirit. Now, the thing with this Torah, once you go into it and start to read it, and you understand it, and you make up your mind to do it, now you have a change of mind. That's a change of heart. Once you start to think differently, you ultimately act differently. Because most people, their thoughts precede their actions. So if you have a criminal mind, chances are you will do criminal acts. So the way you think, the brain is a muscle, and you have to exercise that thing. So you have to be taught how to be righteous, just like most criminals are taught how to be criminals. So you have to recalibrate your thought process and the way you think, especially once you begin to understand the penalties that come with walking contrary to the Most High's law, statute, judgment, and precepts. So to get a new heart and a new mind and a new spirit, that means we cannot be walking on the path that we've been walking on in times past that has led us to all of this trouble and turmoil. So therefore, as we start to think righteously, that's why it's important to read this book every day, that you remain anchored in this, because there's wickedness all around us. And what we are not to do is not to distance ourselves from righteousness and to be caught up in this sea and this current of wickedness that's all around us. So we're to distance ourselves from the wickedness, turn to the Most High's righteousness, read it, immerse ourselves in it, that we may be anchored. And as we start to read it and do the things that are right in the sight of the Most High, then our hearts and our minds and our spirit becomes totally different. It becomes righteous rather than unrighteous. And once you have made that change, those around you will notice it. All right. Verse 32, and that's the last verse of this chapter. For I have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, saith Yah. Wherefore turn yourselves and live, yea. Okay, so the Most High is saying, I take no pleasure in killing you, because once you walk contrary to the Most High's law, statute, judgment, and precepts, depending on how egregious your transgression is, he will remove you from the face of the earth. And he is stating that he takes no pleasure in doing this. So he said here, wherefore turn yourselves and live ye. Turn yourself and live. Stop dying unnecessarily. Turn back. Seek him out. Seek ye out of the book of the law and read. So the house of Israel and the stranger that is of a contrite spirit, you have made errors. We all have. For we have been brought up in the many nations where we have been told and taught that there is no law and the law is done away with. So in essence, what that means, that we have been operating in lawlessness. This is why in the many nations in which we dwell, that is what you see. Absolute lawlessness, absolute unrighteousness, absolute wickedness, idolatry, adultery, and every manner of foul that you could think about. So the Most High is stating here to the house of Israel to turn back. And if you are a stranger that's of a contrite spirit that is seeking the Most High in his ways, you are to turn back also. So this does not specifically just goes to the house of Israel, but he is addressing us specifically here, that we are to turn. And once we do this, then we're to take a hold of this mantle and do our jobs. Our job is to bring forth the Most High's light, the Most High's praise, the Most High's laws. We are to teach it to these nations. But we cannot teach that which we do not know. An easy way to know this is to live it. So therefore, we are to turn back. So if you've made a mistake, and we all have, no one is exempt from sin. We have all done it. Some have done more egregious sin than others. All the Most High is asking for those of you who are of a contrite spirit is to acknowledge where we have wronged him. And once we have done that, we are to come before him. From the many nations of our captivity, we're to find out exactly where Jerusalem is, because that is a city where he placed his name. Once we find out where Jerusalem is, we know that that's the city which he had that house. And we were instructed clearly that if we were to face that city where that house was, it's no longer there. And we were to acknowledge our faults from the many nations in which we have been led away captive, that the Most High said he will hear us and that he will heal us. So therefore, it is upon us now to do our part. The arm, the olive branch, the bridge have been extended to us by which we can reconcile ourselves back onto the Most High. And that bridge is this law. The extension of that mercy is this law. Not only that, the children of Israel cannot see eye to eye and have not seen eye to eye, will not for quite some time, because we're not walking lockstep within this law. So if you were to turn back to this law and refrain and turn away from iniquity, now what happens is that the families of the children of Israel, we will now mesh. We will come together. For the only umbrella that we can ever come together under and be in unison and be at peace is the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. That also goes for the stranger. The only way that we will be at peace with a stranger and a stranger will be at peace with us is when we are in this law. There is no other way. For this law will cause your enemies to be at peace with you. And we're to be mindful of that. So if you've done things that were contrary to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, as we all have, regardless of how egregious they were, simply turn back. Turn to the Most High, acknowledge your faults, and leave those things alone. And you will certainly see an improvement in your life and the things around you. These are very clear-cut instructions. Now the question is, do you have the desire to do that which is right? For some of our people will say, man, I don't want to read it. I don't want to know. They like to continue in wickedness. So provided that you are not one of these individuals, go into the book of this law and read it. And then do the things that are right within the sight of the Most High. And he will spare you all of these troubles that many of our Israelite brethren are dealing with each and every day. For they refuse to hear. They refuse to turn back. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. No one has ever died for you. You died for your own sins. Stop blaming Satan and all this other nonsense that you're doing. There's no Satan anywhere paying for anything that you have done. You're going to pay for everything that you have ever done. Your ways will be returned upon your own head. So therefore, choose life. Choose righteousness, that ye and your seed may live. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. And peace to the stranger that will take a hold of the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and do them. Peace, Israel.